Hello and welcome. Wherever you are in the world today, thank you for joining us for the Rise Traveler, unpacking conversations of sustainable travel. We are here to talk to eco-minded and socially conscious travelers, diversity and inclusion specialists, wildlife conservationists, environmental activists, and anyone using travel as a way to uplift and inspire. Together, we will go a step beyond the Instagram-ready world of travel and take a look at how travel can be a source of growth and development for all people and all communities. And now, here's your host, Amy Hager.
So joining me today remotely from England on the South Coast, about an hour south of London, is Daniel Turner. Daniel, thanks so much for joining me.
You're very welcome. It's great to be here.
So I have so many questions to ask you, but the first one that we have to figure out is, how do you say the name of your company again?
Animondial.
Animondial. And how did you come up with this name? It's like you're creating your own dictionary or something.
Well, in a way, we had to come up with a name that was relevant to what we do. So obviously our focus is on animal protection. So animals had to be in it. And we also work with the travel industry, which is global. So mondial of the world, Animondial. So that's how we came up with the name. I think it was brainstorming over a beer or something. So that obviously helped. But no, we're pleased with the name. It really says what we do.
I love that. I love that you were able to blend it and just kind of create your own unique thing.
Why not? If you create your own business, you can create your own name.
Exactly. Well, so that brings me to my next question. Why did you create Animondial, and what do you all do?
So I'm going to put it in a small nutshell because it is a fairly long story, but I used to work for an international animal welfare organization, and whilst I was there, I created some guidance for the travel industry. And this was the first time that guidance focused on animal welfare had been created for tourism. And in that time of working for the NGO, I sort of led that policy area. And what became the problem is that the ethics of the organization, which was fairly sort of black and white, particularly as far as animals in captivity, often got in the way of meaningful change. And so it became apparent that I had to kind of leave that behind, create a new entity with my friend and colleague, Kaelyn. And we approach things from a more impartial view rather than from a partial view. So we give the whole story and allow people to make an informed decision rather than only knowing half of the story. So that's where really why we founded Animondial. And what we do is provide impartial advice and practical guidance to travel businesses, so tour operators, travel advisors, anyone working in tourism, basically, about any issue to do with animal protection, from individual animal welfare through to species protection, habitat protection, and a little bit wider than that too.
So then, as we're thinking through like what you guys are doing and your impact on the world, especially with tourism businesses and even governments to create animal welfare policies, do you end up actually working directly with travelers as well?
Well, not anymore, I'd say to that, because Animondial is definitely a B2B consultancy. So we're a consultancy specializing in animal and nature protection. And it's really about guiding those companies that include animal activities and experiences within their holiday or vacation tours and experiences. So we guide them on what they should sell, what they shouldn't sell. And if they sell something that is maybe a little bit inappropriate because perhaps the animal's welfare is compromised or people's welfare is, health and safety issue, then we work with the travel business to find a solution to the problem.
Okay, interesting. So do you have an example of like a problem that you guys have been able to kind of work through that could give our listeners somewhat of an idea?
Well, I wouldn't say we've necessarily worked through it, because as our conversation will go, you'll realize that the whole issue of animals in tourism is a very complex one, not only because you're dealing with thousands of different species in lots of different activities, in lots of different destinations, but everybody has their own opinion, and all those different variables cause the complexity. So I suppose the topic I would immediately go for is the whole captive elephant interactions. So like the elephant camps in Southeast Asia, which has received a lot of publicity or negative publicity about the whole riding of elephants. And there's been a lot of pressure on the travel businesses to remove those kind of activities from their itineraries, from their tours. Mm-hmm. And actually, that has caused more harm than good, because a lot of those facilities lose income overnight because those tour operators have removed their business. And the problem is that those animals then don't have the income to buy the food and to ensure that the people looking after them are paid and all these things. So what has happened as a result of that activity is animal sanctuaries have been created, which are far from sanctuaries because they exploit the animals in different ways that actually have compromised the welfare of the animal and also the people involved a lot worse than they were before. And so this is a massive problem. So we've been working with all the different stakeholders to find a solution, and we're still going with that because it is a big one. I mean, there's 4,700 conditioned elephants, trained elephants in just Thailand. So you can't just open the doors and allow them to roam in the wild. I'm afraid that's an idealistic view. That's not a realistic one. So we have to find solutions to these big problems, and tourism has to be part of the solution.
Yeah. It's like realistic solutions for super complex problems that it's probably not going to happen overnight. It sounds like it's going to take years of adjusting multiple things and a lot of mind shifts too, to really find that right solution.
Yeah, totally. And that's really why the opportunity to work with Rise Institute was an opportunity I had to grasp, because the topic is a complex one. Just ending the activity or no longer providing the custom is not necessarily the solution to the problem. Ultimately, because a lot of these animals are owned, they can't just, you can't just confiscate them, particularly if there's no laws that have been breached, or in some cases there are no laws at all. So we have to work with the system, and we have to recognize that as animals, they have welfare needs, they can experience pain, suffering, and distress, they need good quality food, they need suitable environment. And if we remove the income, those qualities will be damaged or removed altogether. And that would actually cause a lot more harm than them being in the system in the first place.
Yeah, this is just such a complex thing to think through. So then tell me a little bit more about how is your work with Rise, and what exactly are you doing with us to really help continue this movement to start going into, I guess, a better direction? I don't know if we'll ever have the right direction, but at least a better direction.
Yeah, I agree. I think we have to move in the right direction. We have to be part of something meaningful. We have to, those people that think the same way as that, you know, rather than just perhaps being pessimistic and saying, you know, climate change is going to end us all, or whatever the sentiment is not going, you know, is not helping anybody. So we've at least got to come together and pull together our efforts and try and deliver some meaningful change. And that's really what Rise Institute for me is all about, on learning about Rise Institute, what they're wanting to achieve, who they're wanting to engage, and largely informing, inspiring, and empowering a whole host of different stakeholders to really understand these complex issues, and to realize that in order to make that progressive change, it's never black and white decision making. It's understanding the complexities, and then it's making an informed decision as to the direction of travel. And I think most of the time people are moving in the right direction. Right. So what I've done with Rise, working with Sarah Bexell from Denver University, is to create a session within the pilot program focused on animal protection in tourism. And because we approach the topic from slightly different angles, I think the session is going to be really engaging for those that come along and listen.
So I feel like you're just giving us a trailer to like this awesome movie. And you just left me at a cliffhanger, Daniel.
Well, I mean, that's what it's all about, right? But I mean, you know, the listener, the watcher will be guaranteed to understand what animal protection in tourism is, what it entails. But I think importantly to understand how animals are involved in tourism, because certainly when I started this topic 20 years ago, and I approached travel businesses saying, what are you doing on animals in tourism? The first thing that they would jump into their minds are, oh, he's talking about viewing animals in Africa, on the plains of Africa, or in the seas, I don't know, in South Africa, or whatever, you know, wild animals in the wild. And yes, that is a component, but you've also got animals in a captive environment. You've got domesticated animals that are used to carry people or loads. You've got animals that are eaten. You know, there's lots of different things you've got to think about, and those are animals in tourism. So that introduction to the topic, introduction to the complexities of it, what happens if things are done in a poor way, so lack of management, what can be achieved if you manage it well, because I truly believe tourism can be a force for good in this. Tourism shouldn't be seen as the culprit. It can be, but it doesn't have to be. And then Sarah and I will kind of explore the opinions that we have between human perception and animal welfare. And then we'll go into standards and whether standards are important, and then talking about these dilemmas where, you know, do you still give custom to an activity that in theory you're against, but you know that by not giving custom, you're not, you know, those animals are going to suffer. So it's that dilemma and how you work around it. So that's what it is in a nutshell, but you'll have to tune in to learn more.
You're going to have to join our pilot program again. registration open until June 4th. I love this. So the next thing that I want to ask you is probably a little bit more on the personal side is you're an environmental biologist by training and trait, right? And so
long time ago, yes.
Okay.
Yes, yeah.
Well, so then tell me about a little bit of the travel that maybe you get to do, either that you've done now or even before you started the company. And think about a trip that really kind of maybe was that aha or changed you. Give us a personal story.
Well, I think actually travel is the creator of everything that I've done, really, and still doing, is as a result of past experiences. And it doesn't you don't have to travel to the other side of the world to have those experiences. It could just be down the road. But I think for me, I grew up in Surrey, which is the green belt, a green area just below London. It's fairly, I don't know, it's fairly sort of protected area, and I didn't really get out much wider than, I don't know, a few hundred yards, 100 miles around that area. So traveling to the other side of the world, which I was given that opportunity at 18 after I finished my school. My school is part of this Round Square Conference, which is people may have heard of Gordonston, where the royal family went. It's kind of produces, the aim of it is not just about academia, it's about giving people the opportunity to understand the world and be ready for it when they kind of open the doors and go out into the outside world. And so I went to one of those schools, and through that, I got an opportunity to live and work in an Indian village, a village in the foothills of the Himalayas. Still a green area, but obviously very different culture and experience altogether. And learning a different culture, but how to communicate in different language, understand nature and animals from a completely different perspective. Rather than reading about the leopard, you would open the door and you would see a leopard, and it was about protecting yourself, protecting the livestock that the family was living with, and all those a different perspective on life. And I think that certainly ignited my passion to explore and understand, and not to take my personal feelings about a topic too strongly, to actually try and think about whatever the topic is from other people's perspectives, from other cultures, from other situations that people may be in. And I suppose that experience has given me that approach on life. And it didn't stop there. I lived in a village in Honduras in Central America, where I was growing tobacco, of all things, working as a farm laborer. And then I also lived in the rainforest in Peru as a guide. And I also ran the jungle lodge in the rainforest as well. So all these experiences, I think, prepare you for what comes next as far as 9 to 5 work.
Well, I love that you and I have a very similar upbringing. Where I grew up in Iowa, we did not travel outside of basically the 3 states that we touched, was Iowa, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. And so I totally can appreciate when you get that first opportunity to really be exposed to other cultures and other things in how people live and how they do. And then to continue to get opportunities like that throughout your life and build on your own personality and I guess your own personal suitcase of things that you can put.
And I think back then, I mean, it wasn't that long ago, but you know, it seems to be, you know, 1980s, 1990s into early 2000s. You know, travel wasn't immersive, really. I mean, yes, the backpacker and so on, but the majority of people would travel in a kind of package style holiday. Most things will be organized pre-tour. So I think that whole immersiveness of what I experienced really I mean, I didn't really know what I was expecting either. So I arrived there and, you know, you were told that there was no running water, you had to get it from a well, there was no lights at certain periods of the day. And you just got used to it because there was no alternative. So I think that immersion is so important. And I'm pleased to see that tourism is now heading that way as far as, let's say, younger generations are wanting to really experience a country rather than just saying, yeah, I've been to, you know, sort of a continental style hotel where, you know, a hotel room could be exactly the same, whether it's in Berlin or Barbados, it looks exactly the same. And I think travel is about exploration and really throwing yourself into a culture and understanding it from grassroots up. And that's really what engages me still when I'm lucky enough to take a holiday.
Love it.
Once in a while. Not recently.
Well, so this is just leading perfectly into probably my favorite question, which is, how do you, Daniel, see the future of the travel industry of tomorrow?
Well, I think it's just that it needs to provide a window into different cultures, different destinations, and not taking your country with you. You know, this is not about, so from an English person, this is not about putting your PG tips, and if you don't know what those are tea bags, taking your tea bags with you in a plastic bag and traveling to the other side of the world so you can still have your cup of tea with your breakfast. It's not about that. It's about leaving your life, where you live, your customs, your routine behind you, and experiencing something different where you're immersed in a different culture. And, you know, then when you come back, you can say that you have been to Berlin or Barbados, completely different locations, and those experiences shouldn't be the same. So I think that's certainly the way to go. As far as my topic, as far as animal tourism, animal engagement in tourism, I think there needs to be two things. Three things. For a start, I don't think travel businesses should distance themselves from animal issues. I know, speaking to a lot of our clients, is that they find, because they're being pressured by both travelers and NGOs about certain activities, they're saying, oh, well, we will remove all animal product from our offerings, and we will just focus on city breaks and, you know, cultural experiences, but not animals. I think that's the wrong move, because unless people really experience the animals in their own environments doing what they do, I'm not talking about a captive situation, and actually understanding the animal, until that happens, you won't get the empathy and you won't get the respect and you won't get the need for their better protection. So I think there needs to be a more reconnection with nature rather than rather than decoupling from nature. I think that's number one. Number two is that the tour operators need to offer activities with animals where the welfare of the animals are guaranteed, and that's fairly easy to do. You can employ Animondial to identify that, or you can do checklists or auditing and that kind of thing. But there's definitely ways that you can ensure that you're selling the right product at the right time to the right customer. And then lastly is that tourism can be a force for good, and where there are these problem issues, such as elephant interactions, such as keeping whales and dolphins in captivity where they perform or you can swim with and things like this, tourism was part of the problem because they sold, there was the demand, they sold the tickets, they drove the interest. Now we know scientifically that these kind of practices are detrimental to animals and in some cases to the people involved, but just removing the custom is not going to be the solution. So tourism needs to work with the supplier, modify the product, the activity that the traveler engages with, and then over a step-by-step period, we phase out the problems and create something innovative, great, but also really great for the animals involved. Because a lot of the animals in captivity are going to be in captivity for life purely because they can't be rehabilitated. There may not be the habitat left for them to go into, or the quantity of habitat required. So we have to find other solutions, but tourism has to be part of that. It's not the culprit, it's the solution. That's my nutshell for that question.
I just love how you ended that. And I'm like, we could just end, but I want to ask you one more question.
Go for it.
So then, Daniel, what legacy do you want to leave behind? You have uncovered and talked through so much today. What legacy do you want?
Well, I'm not sure legacy. I mean, from a personal perspective, I think what I just encourage people to do is not take everything at first value, to look widely, to look either side of you, to look behind you, to look in front of you, up and down, and then you make your decision as to which path to take, rather than just seeing what's in front of you and walking forward or walking backwards. There are many options. I'm not sure that's a legacy. I'm not one to think like that, but I think that's what I would encourage people to do, is think outside the box. Don't put things in silos. Think about everything's connected. Yeah. And, animal welfare, animal protection is so relevant to biodiversity protection, so relevant to climate action, so relevant to preventing the next pandemic. COVID-19 has devastated the world. There could be another COVID 2021, 2022, or a different disease. And this is because of overexploitation of nature. And we need to really regenerate nature, really respect it. And I think recognizing that interconnectivity and that we're part of that is really the way forward.
Daniel, I absolutely have enjoyed our time today and everything that you've just shared with us. And thank you for just talking through these very complex, real things, and also sharing kind of what the future could look like and how we can get to a point. But
yeah, fingers crossed, I think. I mean, there are a lot of problems that we need to address, and I think it's very easy for us as individuals, us as people who really want to see meaningful change, to get disillusioned or, just overpowered by it, saddened by what the future could well hold. But I think for the sake of us, the sake of humanity, for the world, for environmental sustainability, for the planet, we have to think positively, and we have to recognize that us as individuals, but us as, a community, we can really encourage meaningful change, and that's the way forward.
Yes, most of you summarized it so much better than I could. So thank you.
You're very welcome.
I really appreciate spending time with you today. And that brings us to the end of our journey. And so if you've liked what you've heard and you want to hear more, please subscribe to our email list at risetravelinstitute.org/subscribe. And if you haven't got a grasp of this yet, but here at the Rise Travel Institute, we really, really do believe that travel is a powerful tool for positive, transformative change. And if you're a college student, studying abroad or thinking about that gap year, a young professional wanting to get out and spread and see the world, or just anybody really wanting to travel, I want to invite you to head over to risetravelinstitute.org and learn more about our educational courses. We'll be back soon with another episode, but until then, keep roaming, keep learning, and continue to be a Rise traveler.
This podcast is an extension of the Rise Travel Institute, a 501c3 nonprofit committed to empowering young travelers through educational programs, research, study tours, and scholarships. Visit risetravelinstitute.org to learn more.